Good day and welcome to Scriptures Unlocked. In this presentation, I'll be looking at Genesis chapter 2, which focuses on the creation of mankind, the creation of Adam and Eve. But let's do a quick recap. So in the previous presentation, I made the point that on the first 3 days of creation, God formed the heaven and the earth. And on days 4, 5, and 6, God filled these spaces with creatures. So on day 1, God separated the light from the darkness. On day 2, he separated the waters from the waters. So there's water above the firmament, and there was water under the firmament. And on day 3, he gathered the waters under the heavens, and he called them seas, and he created the dry land. So on days 1, 2, and 3, God formed the heavens and the earth. On day 4, he created the sun, moon, and stars to fill the heavenly space. On day 5, he created great whales. He created the birds of the air, and these fill the firmament of the heaven, and he caused the seas to be filled with marine life. On day 6, God created the land animals, and the pinnacle of God's creation was in the creation of mankind, which is what we will look at in this presentation on Genesis chapter 2. So notice what God did while he made the heaven and the earth. So God said various things in the creation of the heavens and the earth. So notice I've highlighted these various verses where God said something. So in verse 3, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. In verse 6, he says, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." In verse 9, God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. In verse 11 of chapter 1, God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth," and it was so. On day 4, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmaments of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." In verse 16, God made 2 great lights. The greater light to rule the day, that's the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So those celestial bodies filled the heavens. And in Genesis 1 verse 20, God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." So God said these things throughout the creation process. He also created great whales in verse 21, "And every living creature that moveth which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind, and God saw that it was good." God not only said, created, but God also blessed. When God created the sea creatures and the birds of the air, God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth." God also said, "Let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind," and it was so. Verse 25 of Genesis 1 tells us that God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And then the pinnacle, the crowning act of God's creative power, was seen when God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." And God blessed mankind, and God said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." And the final verse of Genesis chapter 1 says that God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. The scriptures are clear that God took 6 literal days to create the heavens and the earth. But if Genesis 1 was not enough to prove that creation took 6 literal days, notice how Genesis 2 begins. Genesis 2 verse 1 to 3 says this: "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day," and remember, 7 comes after 6. So after God finished creating in 6 literal days, On the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So viewers, all the host of the heaven includes angels and the celestial bodies such as the sun, moon, and stars. Notice it says, thus the heavens and the earth and all the hosts of them were finished. So angels were created during the 6 days of creation as well. So all the hosts of the heaven and the earth, including the land animals, sea creatures, and humans, were created during 6 days. Then God did 3 things on the 7th day. Notice what he did. 1, God rested. 2, God blessed. And 3, God sanctified. So the 7th day, which would later be known as the Sabbath, was made holy by God and set apart as a memorial because it points back to the 6 days of creation. Notice the Hebrew script of the word translated as rested. It is the Hebrew word Shabbat. It occurs 71 times, and the King James translates Strong's H 7673 in the following manner. It occurs 47 times as cease, rest 11 times, and so forth. So Shabbat simply means to cease, desist, or rest from work or labor. So it means to cause to cease or put an end to work, which is what God did after 6 days of creation. And Shabbat would later become known as a day that is to be kept and a day that is observed as the Sabbath, a day of rest for all humanity. The Hebrew word for sanctify is the Hebrew word kadash. It occurs 172 times in the Hebrew scriptures, and it is translated in a number of ways. Sanctify 108 times, hallow 25 times, dedicate 10 times, holy 7 times, consecrate 5 times, and so forth. So to sanctify, the Hebrew word kadash simply means to consecrate, sanctify, to dedicate, to be hallowed, be holy, and to be separate, which is why the Sabbath is such an important day to God, because it remembers, it is a memorial, it is a commemoration of God's finished work during creation. So Shabbat simply means to set apart as sacred, to observe as holy, to keep sacred. So it's a day that is devoted to resting and worship and remembering God's creative act. And remember that God is indeed the creator of the heavens and the earth. So viewers, Genesis is the book of beginnings. And the first place that the Hebrew word Shabbat appears is in Genesis 2 verse 2, which brings us to the end of the first week on planet Earth. So going forward in time, there will forever be a cycle of 7 days, consisting of 6 days of work and 1 day of rest, similar to what God did during the creation of the heavens and the earth. And that is why we have our 7-day week. It is because God worked for 6 days and he rested on the additional day that he made. So each week consists of 7 days. The first 6 days are working days, and the 7th day is the Sabbath of Jehovah, our God. It is a day that is dedicated, it's a day that is set apart, it's a day that is holy, and it's a day that commemorates, it's a day that memorializes God's creative act, and that he made the heavens and the earth in 6 days. So notice what we are told in Exodus 20 verse 8 again, which is the Sabbath command, the 4th commandment of the 10 commandments. God said, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Jehovah thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Why? For in 6 days, Jehovah, that's his name, what did he do? He made, which means he's the creator. And what did he make? He made the heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. All the creatures that exist today were made in 6 days. And God rested the 7th day Wherefore Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. The Sabbath day there is the Hebrew word Shabbat. And notice, right throughout the scripture, you'll see that there's a cycle of 6 days and 1 day of rest, which is the 7th day. Notice Exodus 23, verse 12. God again speaks, 6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and the son of thy handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. So even the animals are commanded to rest on the 7th day. And your servants, whether they be slaves or maids, they are to rest on the 7th day. Notice as well, Exodus 34, verse 21. God again says, 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. That is the Hebrew word Shabbat. In earing time, that is in seed time, and in harvest, thou shalt rest. So even when you have planted your crops, you are to plant for 6 days and rest on the 7th day, even in the time of harvesting. So God created in 6 days and he rested on the 7th day. And right throughout scripture from that point onward, there's a cycle of 6 days of work and 1 day of resting, which is the 7th day called the Sabbath. Going back to Genesis 2, verse 4 to 6, notice what we are told again. So after saying that thus the heavens and the earth were finished and all the hosts of them, Moses tells us this, these are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created in the day that Jehovah God made the earth and the heavens. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for Jehovah God had not caused it to rain upon the earth. But notice verse 6, but there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. So scripture tells us here that before there was any rain, the earth was watered by a mist through the conversion of vapor into liquid, which we know to be the process of condensation, where gas turns to liquid. And this is how we get dew from in the morning. So based on the atmospheric condition, the gases in the atmosphere is converted into liquid and dew is formed as a result. So viewers, in Genesis 1, God decided to make mankind in his image. So what I'll be doing now is to look at the creation of mankind, because in Genesis chapter 1, which we looked at in the previous presentation, we are given a broad outline of what God did on day 6. But in Genesis chapter 2, God is going to give us more details as to how he went about to create Adam and Eve. Chapter 1 tells us that God said, let us make man in our image, and that man was created in God's image. He made them male and female. But in Genesis chapter 2, we are going to be given detail as to how God created mankind, how he created Adam, and how he created Eve. So let's get right into that. So notice Genesis 2, verse 7. And Jehovah God formed man of the dust of the ground. So that is how man was actually created. And God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So that is what man is comprised of. Dust, which gives us our flesh, and the breath of life, which is in our nostrils. That is what animated Adam. That is what gives us our life. We have the Spirit of God within us. So here we can see Jesus, who is the creator, the Son of God, bending down and forming Adam out of the dust of the ground. And here you are seeing some animals looking on. So Adam was formed from the dust of the ground, and then God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And that clay that was there inanimate became animated as a result of the breath of life, the Spirit of God that was breathed into the nostrils of Adam. So the Hebrew word translated as formed is the Hebrew word yatsar. It occurs 62 times throughout the Hebrew Bible. The King James translates Strong's H3335 in the following manner. Form 26 times, and it is associated with a potter who uses clay to form objects. It means to fashion. It is also used of a maker, to frame, to make. So yatsar simply means to form, fashion, or frame, and that's what God did when he formed Adam out of the dust of the ground. So yatsar means to squeeze into shape, just like a potter would mold the clay into the object that he wants to make. So yatsar means to mold into a form, and that is what God did. He used the clay, the dust of the ground, and he formed a frame of a man. And then he breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. The Hebrew word for breath is neshama. It occurs 24 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 5397, and it is translated as breath 17 times, blast 3 times, spirit twice, inspiration, because it is God's divine inspiration once, and souls once. So neshama means breath or spirit. It is the breath of God. It is the breath of man, and it refers to every breathing thing. It is also associated with the spirit of man, because that is what gives us life, the breath, the neshama. So notice the Strong's definition. Neshama from Strong's H 5395, a puff that is a wind, vital breath, divine inspiration, or intellect. Because we have the Spirit of God in us. The breath of life is a spirit of life. It is what gives us our cognition, our intellect, and it is God inspiration. The Hebrew word for life is hay. It occurs 501 times. It is Strong's H 2416, and it simply means to live, life, and it is used of living thing, whether it is man or animal. It simply means to be active, to be alive. So hay is the word for life in Hebrew. So viewers, the first man was formed by taking pre-existing material, the dust of the ground, and then he was animated by the Spirit of God, which means that man is composed of both the physical and the spiritual. So remember, in the previous presentation, I made the point that God creates in 2 ways. He can bara, which is the Hebrew word for create, and that means to create out of nothing, which is what is known also as ex nihilo. So when he created the heavens and the earth, they came into existence out of nothing. But God can also asa, which is the Hebrew word for make. And when he asas, he uses pre-existing material. So having created the earth out of nothing, because remember, before anything existed, there was nothing. Having created the heaven and the earth is the matter. God then uses the pre-existing material, that is the dust of the ground, the earth, to form Adam. So God can create in 2 ways, either out of nothing or from nothing, or he can use pre-existing material to form or create things or individuals. And that is what he did with Adam. He took the dust of the ground, which is the pre-existing material of the earth, and formed Adam and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and Adam became a living soul, a living being. So mankind is both physical and spiritual, because the spiritual component is the breath of life that comes from God, and that is what gives us our life. Therefore, viewers, mankind can only live, move, and have our being because of 2 things: our flesh and blood, which is the physical component of mankind, and the breath of God, which is that spiritual component. Notice what we are told in Leviticus 17, verse 11 and 14 about the blood. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. So it is our blood that courses through our veins that gives us life. Without the blood, we are dead, because the blood runs through our entire body, and anywhere in our bodies that is not getting any blood is going to die, because as the scriptures tell us, the life of the flesh is in the blood. Notice Leviticus 17, verse 14. For it is the life of all flesh. The blood of it is for the life thereof. For the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. And that is why when people are injured or stabbed or shot and they lose blood, what they're essentially losing is their life. So if you lose enough blood, then your body is going to go into shock and you're going to die, because your life force is leaving you, because the life of the flesh is the blood thereof. That is what the scriptures tell us. And that is borne out every day in this sin-cursed earth, where people are injured or maimed or killed as a result of being stabbed or shot or meeting in an accident. So viewers, similar to how the blood is the life of the flesh, Without the Spirit of God in our nostrils to sustain life, mankind will be reduced to a corpse, that is a lifeless body, just as how Adam was before God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Notice what we are told by James in James 2 verse 26. For the body without the Spirit is dead. So without the Spirit of God in our nostrils, without that breath of life, the body is dead. And that is what Adam was before. He was an inanimate object, formed from the dust of the ground. It was when God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life that Adam became alive. So James tells us that the body without the Spirit is dead. So faith without works is dead also. Death is actually a reversal of how man was created, because the breath returns to God who gave it, and the dust returns to the earth. Notice these verses, which makes the very point. Genesis 3 verse 19, which is what we look at in the next presentation, the fall of man. After Adam and Eve sinned, this is what God told Adam. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground. For out of it was thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. So Genesis 3 verse 19 is telling us that man was made from the dust of the ground, which is what Genesis 2 verse 7 says. Notice Job 27 verse 3. All the while my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils. This is classic Hebrew parallelism, where one thought is said and it is expressed in another way. So Job's breath that was in him is the same thing as the Spirit of God that is in his nostrils. So mankind is made from the dust of the ground, and when we die, the dust goes back to the ground, and the Spirit goes back to God who gave it. Notice what Psalm 146 verse 4 says. When man dies, his breath goeth forth, he returneth to his earth, or he returns to the dust. And in that day, your very thoughts perish, because you are no longer alive. Ecclesiastes 12 verse 7 says this, speaking about death again. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the Spirit shall return unto God who gave it. So viewers, this is actually a reversal of creation. So death is actually a reversal of how mankind was made initially in Genesis 2 verse 7, because God formed man from the dust of the ground, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. When man dies, the breath of life leaves his body, and the body returns to the dust from whence it was taken. Viewers, the Hebrew word for man, which is Adam, provides some deeper insights into the composition of humanity and highlights the fact that there is both a physical and a spiritual component to our existence. Notice the Hebrew word for man. It is Adam. That's the Hebrew script of Adam's name, and Adam here refers to mankind or man in general, but it's also the proper noun of the first human being that was ever created. Adam occurs 552 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 120. It is translated as man 408 times, men 121 times, Adam, that's the name of the first man, 13 times, and so forth. So Adam simply means man or mankind, human being, and it also refers to the first man by name. So Adam simply means a human being, an individual of the human race or the species of mankind. And Adam means ruddy. Viewers, why was Adam given that name? Man was given the name Adam simply because he was formed and taken from the ground, which is the Hebrew word Adamah. Notice on screen you are seeing the three Hebrew letters that makes up the name Adam. There's an Aleph, there's a Dalet, and there's a Mem. This is the Aleph, this is the Dalet, and this is the Mem. Adam, A-D-M, Adam. So Adam equals mankind. And notice the Hebrew word for ground. It is Adamah. Adam, Aleph, Dalet, Mem can be taken from Adamah. And that is why Adam was called Adam, because it was taken from the Adamah. So notice the Hebrew script of Adamah. It occurs 225 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 127. And it simply means land or lands, earth, ground, country, and so forth. It refers to the ground or land, dry land. ground as general, till yielding sustenance, a piece of ground, a specific plot of land, earth, substance that is for building or constructing, ground as earth's visible surface, or a land or territory or country. So Adamah simply means soil from its general redness, which is why Adam was ruddy, because the earth from which it was taken was red soil, red dirt. So viewers, the Hebrew language is very interesting, and if you study the Hebrew letters and what they symbolize, then you can get a lot more meaning out of the scriptures. So that is why Adam was so called, because it was taken from the Adamah. Another interesting point about Adam can also be seen in the 3 Hebrew letters that make up his name, which actually confirms both the physical and spiritual aspects of humanity. Notice again, you are seeing here, Adam is composed of 3 Hebrew letters, the Aleph, the Dalet, and the Mem. That is Adam. But if you break down these 3 letters, the Aleph represents God, and that's a spiritual component. That's a breath of life. This is the Aleph. It represents God. That's God's letter. The last 2 letters in Adam is the Dalet Mem, and this is the Hebrew word for blood, Dam. So Adam consists of a physical component, which is the blood, and a spiritual component, which is the Aleph, which is God's letter, the breath of life. So the Aleph represents God, and the Dalet Mem is the Hebrew word for blood, which is a physical component of mankind. Dam is Strong's H 1826. It simply means blood, as that which when shed causes death of man or an animal. Because remember, I said earlier that the life of the flesh is the blood thereof. So when you shed an animal's blood or shed a human's blood, it will cause them to die, because the blood is their life. Therefore, viewers, within mankind, there's a commingling of the flesh, which is the physical aspect, and the spirit, so that the blood and the spirit of God works in tandem to preserve and sustain life of the human being. So man is both physical and spiritual. We have the spirit of God in our nostrils, which gives us our life, and we also have our flesh and blood, which is a physical component of the human being. Additionally, viewers, by doing a numerical analysis of the name Adam and comparing it with the actual name of God, Yehovah, spelled out, will reveal that the numerical values are identical. Adam consists of an Aleph, Dalet, and Mem. An Aleph has a numerical value of 1 because Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Dalet is the 4th letter. It has a numerical value of 4. The Mem has a numerical value of 40. So 40 plus 4 is 44, plus 1 is 45. So the numerical value of the name of Adam is 45. God's name is comprised of 4 Hebrew letters, Yod, He, Vav, He. And if you were to spell out each of these letters, a Yod is spelled by a Yod, a Vav, and a Dalet. A Yod is 10, a Vav is 6, Dalet is 4. That's 10 plus 6 is 16, and 4, that's 20. A He is comprised of a He and an Aleph, and that's 6. A Vav is comprised of a Vav, an Aleph, and a Vav. That 6 plus 1 is 7, and 6, that's 13. And a He is 5, and 1 is 6. So when you add all these together, God's name spelled out gives us the same numerical value of 45, which is identical to Adam's name. Why is that important? This is important because mankind was created in the image of God, and we were made to be like him, with the ability to think, reason, and make rational decisions, which is what separates humanity from the animals who operate based on instincts. So notice the Hebrew word for beast. The Hebrew word for beast is the Hebrew word behemah, and it simply means in it is what it is, because animals operate based on instincts. They are programmed. They will operate based on their nature. So behemah is Strong's H 929. It occurs 189 times, and it is translated as beast 136 times and cattle 53 times. It is talking about either a domesticated animal or wild beast. Our English word behemoth was derived from the original Hebrew word behemah, which is basically a brute beast. And this is what separates humanity from the animals. Animals have some sort of intellect, but they are lower level animals. Human beings are sentient creatures. And that is why we were made in the image of God, because we are made to be like God. So notice what we are told in Genesis 1:26 and 27. God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. The Hebrew word for image is selem. It occurs 17 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 6754. It simply means image, likeness, or resemblance. So man was made to resemble his maker. So mankind was created to resemble God and reflect his likeness on the earth. The Hebrew word for likeness used in Genesis 1:26 is demuth. It occurs 25 times. It is Strong's H 1823, and it simply means likeness. And it has been translated as such in the King James Version 19 times. Similitude twice, like 2 times, manner once, and fashion once. So viewers, mankind was created with the potential to be more than just dirt. Even though we are formed from the dust of the ground, we were created with the potential and capacity to be more than just dirt from which we were made, because we have God's divine spark, we have God's Alec within us, and we were created in God's image to be like him. That is what makes us different from the animals. I want you to notice the similarities of the Hebrew letters that constitute Adam and ground, as well as those of the ground and light. Notice here, which is what I showed earlier. This is the Hebrew script for Adam. Notice the letters. You don't have to understand Hebrew, but just notice the letters and the shape of the letters. Adam's name is comprised of an Aleph, a Dalet, and a Mem. And it means man. It is the first name of the first man, Adam. Adam was taken from the Adamah. Within Adamah, you get Adam's name, the Aleph, the Dalet, and the Mem. He formed Adam from the dust of the ground, and that is why he was called Adam, because he was taken from the Adamah. Notice the similarities between the Adamah, which is the ground, and the Hebrew word for like, which is Damah. So the last 3 letters in Adamah is a Dalet, a Mem, and a He. The Hebrew word for like is Damah, and it has the same 3 letters, a Dalet, a Mem, and a He. So there's a similarity between Adam and Adamah, and there's a similarity between the word Damah and Adamah. So mankind was made to be more than just dirt. Damah is a Hebrew word translated as like or compare. It occurs 29 times. It means to think, or it means to make oneself like. And that is why mankind was made in God's image, because we are made to be like God. So Damah simply means to resemble, to liken, or to consider, or to think like God. Because the fact that we have the Spirit of God means we have the mind of God, and we can think like God. And Adam was able to think like God because he had the mind of God before he fell into sin. The Hebrew word for similar, or to be like, is domah. And since Adam was taken from the Adamah, then it makes perfect sense that man was made to be similar to God. So notice the Hebrew word for similar. It is Adomah. This is the Aleph, which is God's letter, and this is the Domah, which means to be similar. So what this is saying to us, viewers, is that mankind was made to be similar to God. That is why we were made in his image and in his likeness, because we were made to reflect him and to be his image bearers on the earth. Viewers, man's similarity to God can also be seen in him being given dominion over all of creation, just as how God is sovereign over all creation. Notice what God said and did in Genesis 1:27 and 28. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, that is Adam and Eve. And God said unto them, have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. So mankind was given dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Notice how David puts it in Psalm 8, verse 3 to 8. David said this, when I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels. The actual Hebrew word here is Elohim, which is translated as God. So in essence, this could read literally, for thou hast made him a little lower than God, and has crowned him with glory and honor, just as how God is clothed with glory and honor. And note what David said, which is what God did in Genesis 1, 26 and 27. Thou hast made him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things, not some things, all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, yea, and the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the sea. So therefore, viewers, man has dominion over land, air, and sea, just as how God has dominion and God is sovereign over the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is. God created the earth to be inhabited. He placed Adam in charge of this terrestrial ball, the earth. Adam has dominion, and mankind, remember, Adam means mankind. So mankind has dominion over everything that pertains to the earth. The heavens above us, he has dominion over the fowls of the air. He has dominion over the cattle, everything that moveth upon the face of the ground. And he also has dominion over the fish of the sea. He has dominion over land, air, and sea. Similar to how God has dominion over all of his creation. This is how mankind is similar to God. We operate in a similar manner to how God operates. And God ordained it to be so. So mankind has a level of dignity. But only that we have fallen so far and sometimes act less than the animals. But we were created initially to be like God, because we're made in his image to reflect his likeness and to be his image bearers upon the earth. So mankind was the pinnacle of God's creation, and that is why God went through such lengths to redeem mankind from the curse of sin. That is how much God loves us as humanity. We are not just dirt. We are more than dirt. We have the potential to be more than just dirt, because we have God's Aleph. We have God's spirit within us. We have God's divine inspiration. And that is why even today, mankind have advanced so much in technology because of the wisdom of God within us. And only if we would use our God-given abilities for good instead of evil, this world would be such a wonderful place. But because of sin, as we will look at in the next presentation, mankind has fallen, mankind has degenerated, mankind has become even less than what they were made to be. So going back to Genesis 2, verse 8, the scriptures tell us that Jehovah God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. So what this is telling us, this is giving us added information by stating that Adam was created before the Garden of Eden was ever planted, and that he was then placed inside the Garden of Eden, and Eden became his garden home. In Genesis chapter 1, we are told that God caused the earth to bring forth trees. And this is now telling us how God did it. And out of the ground, out of the Adamah, made Jehovah God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we are introduced for the first time to the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And this particular tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, will feature prominently in the fall of man in the next chapter. And that's the next presentation. Genesis 2, verse 10 to 14 tells us what was also in Eden. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden. And from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pishon. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. So this is the first mention of gold in the scriptures. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. These are precious stones. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is that which compasses the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Idekel. That is which goeth toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. We are familiar with the Euphrates, and the Hiddekel is also known as the Tigris River. The Hebrew word Pishon means increase. The Hebrew word Gihon means bursting forth. The Hebrew word Idekel means rapid. And Euphrates means fruitfulness. So here on screen, you are seeing the two of the rivers mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. It runs in the area known as Mesopotamia. And Mesopotamia means land between two rivers because it is found between the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. And this entire area is known as the Fertile Crescent because of the rivers that flow through this particular region. Genesis 2:15 to 17 tells us this. And it repeats what God did earlier. And Jehovah God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So that was Adam's work. His occupation was to dress and keep the garden. And Jehovah God commanded the man. Notice what God was now going to command the man. He gave him a positive command by saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. He then gave him a negative command. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. That was a plain command that God gave Adam and Eve. He could eat from every tree in the garden except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And this tree served to be a test of mankind's loyalty if they would obey what God said. And we all know, as we will look at in the next presentation, in the next chapter, that Adam and Eve disobeyed God and they ate from the forbidden tree. And as a result of their disobedience, sin entered the world. And as a result of sin, death passed upon all men, because that is what God said to Adam. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Ever since Adam fell, death has been an intruder into the human existence, because the wages of sin, the scriptures tell us, is death. Notice Genesis 2:18 to 20. And Jehovah God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him. And verse 19 says, and out of the ground Jehovah God formed every beast of the field. And having formed them out of the ground, God brought them unto Adam, the man, to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So notice another similarity. So Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. So this is yet another way in which mankind is similar to God, because Adam was given the autonomy and authority to name every living creature under his dominion. So remember when God created in Genesis chapter 1, he called the firmament heaven. He called the gathering together of the waters seas. He called the dry land earth. He gave names to his creation. Having created all things and put them under Adam's dominion, God then said to his crowning act of creation, mankind, he said to Adam, name these animals, and Adam named them. And the scriptures tell us that whatsoever Adam named them, that was their name. So this is how mankind is also similar to God, because we operate in a similar manner to how God operates, because God ordained it to be so, because we were made in his likeness and we were made to occupy and rule over the earth and subdue it. So notice now the creation of woman. So we've looked at how Adam was created. We are now going to look at the creation of woman. Genesis 2:21 and Genesis 2:22 tells us how Eve was created. And Jehovah God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which Jehovah God had taken from man, made he a woman and brought her unto the man. So viewers, the first surgery on planet Earth was performed when God made an incision in Adam's side and took a rib, which he then used to build a woman. That Hebrew word translated as made, Strong's H 1129, is the Hebrew word bana. It means to build. So God used the rib that he took from Adam to build a woman or make a woman. So the Hebrew word for made is bana. It occurs 376 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is translated as build 340 times, build up 14 times. But essentially, it can also mean to have children or to obtain children. She was now going to assist or help Adam in building up the human family. Because remember, the very first command that God gave Adam and Eve was that they were to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. So the Hebrew word bana means to build, to establish, and that means to build a house or establish a family. So notice the Hebrew construction of this word bana. Bana is formed from the word ben, and ben is another Hebrew word for son, and the son is the seed of the house. So if you look at the Hebrew word for son, one of the Hebrew words for son, previously we looked at bar, which means son also, but the most common Hebrew word for son is ben. Bet, we mentioned, means a house, and noon is the picture of a seed, a sperm. So ben means seed of the house. And who is the seed of the house? The son, the children. So bana is constructed by placing an he, which is the letter representing the spirit, beside the bet and the noon. So here you have the bet and the noon, the he is added, and you have bana. So the son is not only the seed of the house, but it is through the son's seed, his posterity, that the house or family will be built. Therefore, viewers, Eve was built in a unique way to complement Adam and help him in building up the human race through the propagation of offspring, and sons were preferred to daughters because daughters would one day marry and leave to build a family for her husband. So in the ancient Near East, in the Middle East, in that culture, sons were preferred to daughters for the very reason that I mentioned earlier, because daughters would one day marry and they would leave their father's house and be joined to their husband's family. And when they start having children, it is actually building up the family of her husband. But sons would remain, and when the sons have children, he's actually building upon his father's posterity. So in the Hebrew mind, sons were always preferred to daughters. Not that they didn't love their daughters, but they preferred sons because sons are the ones who would build the family. And it can be seen in the very word bana, which is a ben, which is a son, along with an he, which gives you the Hebrew word bana. So viewers, there's a clear connection between producing sons and the building of the family throughout the scriptures. Notice, for example, Genesis 16, verse 1 and 2. This is the first place where having a son in particular was important. So now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children. And she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, Jehovah hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children. That's a Hebrew word, banah. In other words, it may be that I may obtain a son by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. So the Hebrew word translated as obtain children by her is banah. Strong's H 1129. Another place where it is mentioned is in Genesis 30, verse 1 to 5. Another place where Jacob's wife Rachel was also barren. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, Give me children. That Hebrew word there is ben. In other words, it says, Give me sons. because sons were preferred, because sons are the ones who would build up the family. So in essence, she was saying literally, give me sons or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold my maid, Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. In other words, that I may have sons by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. So notice, the Hebrew word for son is Bain, Strong's H 1121. And Bath is the Hebrew word for daughter. So when Rachel said, give me Ben, she is saying, give me sons or else I die. Because sons were preferred to daughters, because sons are the ones who would build up the family. And note what she said, I want to have children by her. So she wanted to build a family with Jacob, because Jacob was building a family with Leah, her sister. And she used her handmaid Bilhah as a concubine to achieve that purpose. So Bilhah, in essence, became a surrogate mother for Rachel. So viewers, going back to Genesis 2, verse 23 to 25, when Eve was presented after God performed that surgery and built a woman for Adam, when she was presented to Adam for the very first time, notice his response. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So viewers, sticking with the theme of building the family, it's clear that the man and the woman are the initial building blocks of the family unit. And then children are born, which results in them becoming father and mother. Let's now investigate the Hebrew words translated as father and mother in Genesis 2:24, since both of them contribute something in order to generate offspring and build up the household. The Hebrew word for father is Av. It consists of an Aleph and a Bet. Av occurs 1,215 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H1. It is the first word that can be formed in Hebrew, because the first letter is Aleph and the second letter is Bet. And when you put an Aleph and a Bet together, you get Ab, which means father. Aleph represents an ox's head, which represents strength or strong. Bet is a symbol of a house. So the father is the strength of the house. He's the leader of the house. He's the one that protects his house. So the father is the strength of the house. He's Av. The Hebrew word for mother is Aim. It has an Aleph and a Mem. It occurs 220 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 517. And it is translated as mother 214 times, dam 5 times, and parting once. It simply means mother. It is the mother of humans or of animals. So M simply means a mother as the bond of the family. So let's look at the Hebrew word and its symbol for mother in Hebrew. It is an Aleph and a Mem. Aleph is an ox's head, which represents strength. Mem is a symbol of water. Aim became the Hebrew word for mother because in ancient times, glue was made by boiling animal skins in water. And the collagen found in the mammal skin would form a sticky gelatinous substance which was used to bind things together. Hence the phrase strong water. And because the mother, by nature, is the glue of the family, because she's the one that holds the family together, M became the Hebrew word for mother. Let's now do a numerical analysis of father and mother, which comes together to produce a child. So Aleph is the first letter and Bet is the second letter. And that gives us the Hebrew word Av. Av has a numerical value of 3 because Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3. So the numerical value of father is 3. Mother has a numerical value of 41. because Aleph is 1 and Mem is 40. And the Hebrew word for child is Yeled. Yod is 10, Lamed is 30, and Dalet is 4. 30 plus 10 is 40. 40 plus 4 is 44. So notice, the numerical value of father is 3. The numerical value of mother is 41. When father and mother comes together, 3 plus 41 equal 44. And they produce a child, which is the Hebrew word Yeled. And Yeled has a numerical value of 44 because a child is produced by the father and the mother coming together. Notice the Hebrew script of Yeled. Yeled comes from the Hebrew word Yalad. It occurs 89 times. It simply means child or young man, young ones, sons or boys. Notice the emphasis is on the male descendant. Yeled is Strong's H 3206. It is a masculine noun because it is referring to a male descendant of the parent. It is child, son, boy, offspring, youth. So Yeled means something that is born, that is a lad or offspring, boy, child, or young man. It comes from the word Yalad, which occurs 498 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 3205. And Yalad means to beget, that is to be born, to bring forth, to bear, to be in labor, to give birth, born. So Yalad means to bear, to bring forth, to beget, to gender, or to be in travail just before a woman gives birth. It refers to childbirth. So notice the first place where Yalad occurs. It is in Genesis 3, verse 16. And you will see that there's a woman, there's a husband, and there's conception taking place, and there's a bringing forth of children. Notice what God said to Eve. Unto the woman, he, God, said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth, that's Yalad. Children, that's Bane. Sons. Strong's H 1121 is the Hebrew word Bane. And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Therefore, viewers, when children are born, they receive blood, that is life, from both father and mother. So it's not a coincidence that the numerical value of blood is 44, because look at it again. Father has a numerical value of 3, and mother has a numerical value of 41. 3 plus 41 equals 44. The numerical value of blood is 44. Dalet has a numerical value of 4. Mem has a numerical value of 40. 40 plus 4 equals 44. Let's now examine the Hebrew words translated as man and woman to see what else we can learn from this intriguing language, because a lot of interesting insights can be gleaned by studying the letters that make up Hebrew words. The Hebrew word for man is Ish. Notice the Hebrew script. There's an Aleph, there's a Yod, and there's a Sheen. It occurs 1,639 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 376. It is translated as man 1,002 times, men 210 times, and so forth. Ish simply means man, male, that is in contrast to a woman or a female. It can also be used to refer to a husband, a human being, or a person in general, or mankind. So the Hebrew word for man is Ish, and it is written with 3 Hebrew letters, an Aleph, a Yod, and a Sheen. The Hebrew word for woman is Isha. It also has 3 letters, an Aleph, a Sheen, and a He. It is the Hebrew word which occurs 780 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 802. It is translated in the following ways. Wife, 425 times. Woman, 324 times. Female, twice, and so forth. So Isha simply means a woman, a wife, or a female. A woman, that is the opposite of a man. It can be a single woman or a married woman. It also refers to the female of animals. I want you to pay keen attention to the fact that the Hebrew words for man and woman have 2 similar letters, but there's also a notable difference with one of the letters. So notice on screen, you are seeing the Hebrew word for man. Ish. Man has an aleph and a sheen. The Hebrew word for woman is Isha. This word also has an aleph and a sheen. So these are the similar letters for both a man and a woman, an aleph and a sheen. So both man and woman have an aleph and a sheen. However, man has a yod, which is this middle letter, while a woman has an he, which is this ending letter. Very interesting. The yod and he, when put together, forms the shortened form of God's name, Yah, which is once again pointing to the fact that both man and woman were made in the image of God. Here is the Hebrew script of God's shortened name, Yah, because remember, God's actual name is Yehovah, but the shortened form of his name is Yah, or Jah. It is a contraction of his actual name, Yod He Vav He. So there's the Yod, first letter, and there's the He, last letter. So a contraction of God's actual name is the first and last letter, which is Yah. It occurs 49 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H, 3050, and it is translated as Lord, capital L-O-R-D, 48 times, and Jah once in the King James Version. So Jah is Jehovah or Yehovah in the Hebrew in the shortened form. It is a proper name of the one true God. It is used in many compounds. So names beginning with the letters J-E, like Jehoshaphat, has God's name within his name. And names ending with I-A-H or J-A-H, like Isaiah or Elijah, is a part of God's name, is in their name. Yah is a contraction of Strong's H 3068, which is Yehovah, and meaning the same, Jah, the sacred name of God. Notice some of the verses in which the shortened form of God's name is used. The first place where it is mentioned is in Exodus 15, verse 2. Yah is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My father's God, and I will exalt him. Psalm 68, verse 4 says this: Sing unto God, sing praises to his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name, Jah. That's Strong's H 3050, the Hebrew word Yah, a Yod and a He, and rejoice before him. Notice also this verse, Psalm 106, verse 48. Blessed be Yehovah, that's God's actual name, God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Let all the people say, Amen. Praise ye Yah. The Hebrew word for praise is halal. So hallelujah means praise Yah. So we are praising God, but we are using the shortened form of Yehovah, which is Yah. Hidden within the Hebrew words for man and woman is the fact that God must be ever present in the midst of human interaction. And there should also be a connection with the divine. If the letters Yah, which represents God, are absent from the relationship between a man and a woman, all that will be left is the Hebrew word for fire, which is Esh. So here is the Hebrew word for man, an aleph, a yod, and a sheen. If I were to take out this yod representing God, all that would be left would be an aleph and a sheen, which is Esh, which is the Hebrew word for fire. And similarly, if I were to take away the he from the woman, all you will be left with is an Ash. An Ash is the Hebrew word for fire. It occurs 379 times, and it is Strong's H 784. It simply means fire or burning. Mankind was created to be like God. And within mankind, we have the Spirit of God. We have the breath of life. And that is why man, the Ish, has a Yod, and a woman has an He. We have a divine spark within us. We have the breath of God. We have the life of God within us. So each person, a man brings a part of God to the relationship. A woman brings a part of God to the relationship. So when they come together in marriage, they are bringing God as a part of the marriage. So if we as human beings decide that we want to live without God, it will lead to fire. So if a man wants to live without God and a woman wants to live without God and they come together, all that is left is two fiery individuals. When two combustible materials come together, it will cause an explosion that will destroy each other. And firemen oftentimes use fire to burn out another fire. So two fiery individuals without God present will result in death and destruction. So viewers, we have gone through Genesis chapter 2, where we looked at the creation of mankind. We have looked at the various insights that we can glean by studying the Hebrew letters that form various words. Mankind was created to be like God. We resemble God. We were made to reflect God's image. We were given the same autonomy and authority, just as our God is sovereign over all creation. And God wants us to be like him. So let us continue to emulate and live according to the dignity with which we were created and be like God, our creator. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And the next presentation will look at the fall of man, which is Genesis chapter 3. Have yourselves a wonderful day.